Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you, Salman, for inviting us to last conference. Good everyone, everybody. So basically, we are coming from the Catalyst. We are a technology company behind Bank Jago in Indonesia. We are specializing in product engineering, services and solution and operation. Yeah. Uh, You can call me Fari. I'm a people partner lead at the Catalyst, overseeing the whole people experience in DK. Consists of the product engineering and support function, and I will be accompanied by our principal engineer, Wira Siwananda.
Yeah, we're testing the system by doing a double presentation. Hope this works because apparently we only have this one bulu-bulu, right? My name is Wira. I'm a principal engineer in the Catalyst. I joined DK 2021, and that's basically the talk is about a retrospective on how we, the Catalyst or DK, embrace experimentation to assess engineering capability and expand it to other areas. Oh, no. Okay. The story started when I first joined DK back in 2021, where there's a lot of operational challenges that we face in Jago. Because DK is actually the company that builds Jago Bank, the technology arm. And there's a lot of issues on the operational side where we have a high bus factor with a couple of individuals that are owning or basically running the organization. And there's a lack of visibility into the incidents. One of the biggest problem that we saw in the beginning was people are failing to register and people cannot even log in. And that is not even treated as an incident. And people are just moving along thinking everything is fine. And even for deployment, there's also a deployment and release bottlenecks where the whole organization would actually get involved in a Google Meet at around 10 p.m. Around 200 people will join in, and the deployment can actually run until 4, 5, 6 hours, which is ridiculous. So the bank is actually dead during that period. And, well, people are still thinking that this is fine. Like everything is burning. People are burning out, but nobody is actually raising a concern. And even on the engineering side, we have the broken Git practices, lack of backward compatibility. Testing cycle is actually late, so we deliver one feature in the sprint, and then the testing is only happening in the next one. And feature flagging is also broken. Literally a JSON file that is shipped together with the app. And every time we want to turn on or off the feature flag, we actually have to update the JSON file and then release it together with the app again, which is ridiculous, right? But anyway, this is fun. So it's almost like we have a philosophy, right? I don't always test my code, but when I do it in production. That's literally what's happening. And a quote by a colleague of mine is basically, we don't stress test, we actually test stress. So see what's the tolerance level? And how do we get there? So a further look back, a flashback on how it started. I think Farik will be able to explain.
Yeah. Okay. So understanding how it's the POV from Wira that comes on the 2021, we need to be able to reverse into 2020. What's happening before? So basically, in 2020, we are engineering team with 170 people. We are building value proposition. We are trying to prepare app development for launch, and we did it in 2021. We are growing very rapidly. We are launched and gained 3 million customer, and it's integrated into Gojek and Bibit. And we are pushing hard for the go-to-market to scale fast. But what other people get back. What people is can understand. Basically, in 2020, we are born during pandemic and born distributed. The team are mainly composed with junior engineer, and we are building the hub in India. To be able to address anything that happened in 2021, we have started hiring talent in Singapore and virtual remote Russia, Europe, Australia, and we acquired software house. That most likely happened that this one. So we foresee any burn rate, any conflict, and highly attrition in 2021 because we are doubling up our size in team capacity. Next. So basically, this is most of the concern and comment that we received back then from our employee in 2021, and this is basically that we captured based on qualitative and quantitative research. Okay.
So in retrospect, the challenges that we face has been appearing from 2020 all the way to 2021. There's a growing complexity that's uncontrolled on the business side, and the development team is becoming very, very reactive to the business requirement. And technical debt is actually getting introduced over and over again, and it becomes a vicious cycle because we're not repaying them at all. And in terms of the organizational and talent, there's a big gap between the junior and the senior, and also we don't know who are the senior people in the organization because of the high bias factor in a couple of individuals. The consequence of this is that for nearly 2 years after we figured this out, the engineering effort is always focusing on stabilizing the system and halting almost new feature development. So that's the journey from 2021 onwards. Now, the hypothesis that we have at that point is that the operating model itself is a bottleneck, and our people are being left behind, and we fail to equip them with enough skills to thrive in the new and growing landscape. So a question appears, right? So what would be the operating model that should be suitable for the ever-increasing size and context of the business demand? And here comes the intervention, where we basically work closely from engineering and also from people partner, and to understand what is needed by the organization.
This is where we are coming into equation in and many of our new hire. So basically in 2021, we are starting to hire more senior people. So we found that we are starting on the 2020 end of 2021. We are found that less is our go-to operating model that we wanted to adopt. So we are trying to adopt on October 2021, and on the people side, we are trying to start to hire principal engineer, the product manager, and agile coaches back then, and this is fully supported by the management. Yeah. Then basically then came the movement. So almost from 1.5 years, I think we are trying to reform and revamp the organization by clustering our feature based on customer journey. So we are starting with partnership. Back then partnership and up until now being led by Wira, and then coming money storage, money management, customer centricity, platform, and onboarding servicing. So basically, we are able to flip is one of our term that we use when we try to organize people around new methodology, which is LESS. It's being held by Stanley, Victor, and other folks in OT and others. And then on the practice level, we are trying to introduce some quote-unquote framework how we can constitute and determine what is level of seniority. More detail will be
So yeah, essentially because we identify the talent gaps between all the engineers in the organization, we try to improve or grow people, how to help them to earn more skills or grow to be a bit more senior engineer. And the first experiment that we tried to do was to create some technical curriculum and actually enroll. We kind of forcibly enroll everyone to enroll into the technical curriculum, which is not ideal, but that's something that we think needs to be done at that point. And then we forcibly also ask people to start coming up with a development plan, and we dub it the individual development plan. So the persona of each individual engineers becomes something like this. They have a good knowledge on the JavaScript, they're intermediate in Kafka, advanced in Mongo, and advanced in Postgres. Obviously, the tech stack is basically something that we take from our existing tech stack. We don't want people to start randomly learning other stuffs, right? And from there, things seems to run smoothly, but there's a growing sense of unease starting to appear. Because even after that, it becomes a game of whack-a-mole, right? Underlying issues that we thought have been settled now start appearing again. The technical immaturity is still there. The operational inefficiency is still appearing. And then we also realize, even with the technical curriculum and the individual development plan that we did, we still have the inability, not have, basically we are lacking the ability to measure the capability of engineers. We still don't know how senior is senior and how junior is junior. And then due to the plan formation that Farid was mentioning earlier, based on area of work, we call them plan for no good reason. There are silos appearing. So each areas are enabled to work independently, but that's exactly what they did. They work independently. And from there, we try to tie it between the people and the operating model, and how do we actually solve that?
So I think this is where we are coming into realization where good operating model without good people that operate is just a half. So back then, this is the year in 2022, this is the year that we wanted to double down in how we wanted to build capability. Because let's say less is one of the good method, but if there is no technical expertise, it will hinder our effectiveness. So that comes with our realization. So we are coming into the second problem, which is how to grow the team so that we can scale sustainably. This is basically our basic proposition in first subject. How we debug and engineer. The immediate solution is to develop and hire. But in order for us to be able to do this, we need to be able to define seniority, roles, and assess current state and what plan with the future. Because if we only hire, and we left people that we already with us for 2-3 years, it just becoming technical debt in the future. So we need to have some framework. We need to have some scaffolding for people to be able to rise to the occasion. And then we try to get back to the past, basically. Back then, our founder is coming from banking industry. As you know, banking industry is a very meticulous, having higher band from 0 until 13, 20-ish something. When our founder wanted to create this setup, we do not want to go into that route. So basically, we create organization where the layer is maximum is 5. It's to instill speed and agility. So this is our CEO, chief, and each team leader is being accountable for selected features. And it articulates into how we create corporate banding and our pay scale grid. And to make, because the trauma is so severe, we flip the band. Basically, the band 1 is the highest, the lowest is 5. This is served as a lock-in mechanism. So you can imagine back then in 2019 and 2020, this is a good intention. But when we implement this and it's going forward until 2022, what's happening is our product is growing in complexity. The team is being clustered into clan, and the layer is cannot be properly articulated again. And in 2021, when we hire the PE and lead engineers, you can see that back then we have junior engineers, engineer senior, and then when we hire Wira and other senior folks in Singapore, we kind of create some intervention in the band. So basically, it creating some anomaly. Yeah. Anomaly. Yeah. Okay. So basically, our hypothesis that our band, similar like code, is technical band. It's a very systemic, and it create the inverted structure from 5 to 1. It's creating perception of glass ceiling in our talent. If I already 2, when I becoming 1, but 1 is CEO, and based on data that coming from the research and coming from us, it validates. Yeah. So similar like code, it just perfectly same for us just to refactor the system. So I think that comes part of experimentation and iteration. Yeah. So the road that we choose is basically we are not trying to, first thing first, we are trying to give meaning. Yeah. Yeah. Next. So first thing first, we okay.
If you want to continue, you can. I don't mind. But anyway, so experimentation, right? We go through multiple iteration, but we do realize as well that we cannot take out the holy scripture that people are working on and without replacing it with something else, right? So instead of ripping the band-aid and then start changing the band immediately, we try to put more meaning into each of the band. Instead of the old way of doing it is very vague, because the band is being used by multiple areas, including product design and even in the Jago organization itself. We try to expand a little bit more on the soft skills and technical skills for the engineering, and that's when everything started. The first iteration happened with deeper meaning. We tried to actually pull out everyone, all the names of all the engineers in the organization, and we tried to assign them in band 5 to band 1 according to the new definition that we actually created. An interesting phenomena starts appearing where apparently people that are formerly in band 4 starts falling into band 5, and some other people starts falling into band 3. So this is becoming a question of whether should we promote some people or demote some people, but we don't want to go there yet because demotion instill a lot of things, and even for promotion without a proper process how to do that, we can't willy-nilly move people up and above, right? And another interesting phenomenon that appears is that in band 2, apparently the gap is really, really big. So when we try to map some of these people, some people that are formerly in band 2 actually goes into an unmapped territory where they don't fit into band 3, but they're not at band 2 yet. And there's also the other side of the coin where there are people that are unmapped that are sitting between band 2 and band 1 because they're not on band 1 capability level yet, but they're already growing more than the band 2 definition. So there's a mismatch in reality after we did this calibration effort that is actually unearthed. And then we go to the second iteration because previously we know that the band is going from 5 to 1 and 1 is actually capped. We can't start introducing band 0. That doesn't make sense at all. So we basically decided to, you know what, maybe we should create a mastery framework that is completely separated from the band. And that's why we start coming in with a profile, and we name it capability profile. that goes from profile A to profile E to still keep the 5 leveling that we have previously. And then we try to break it down further into different level of scope of work and also the influence across the organization. So the lowest profile, which is junior engineer essentially, is going on the individual level, and then we'll work on task and story. And then it grows to team and feature, and then multi-team and epics, and then cross-plan initiatives and domains, and then company, and then deciding organization-wide decision, and also technology-wide organization-wide technology decision. Now, even with the second iteration, we see that there are still gaps because we've moved the philosophy from delivery-centered model to capability-driven organization, and all centered on engineering excellence. And then there's still a talent constraint because our previous approach of band and profile is still too rigid. We still lack that flexibility to map the diverse talent. If you remember a couple of slides ago, where there are people on band 2 that is actually between band 2 and band 1, and between band 3 and band 2. And also we need to anticipate growth because people will definitely grow, and the model of the 5 profile is providing to be not sufficient. So going from there, we actually introduce further the third iteration.
Yeah, this is basically that we use currently now. So basically, we are choosing to have 7 layer, yeah, which each layer has its own layer, yeah, that we map based on the pattern that we map coming from the calibration, yeah. So that would be the first. The second, next. We are distill further each of the technical and the skill and the soft skill into specific competency or skill in order for people to be able to grasp further, because it's not too descriptive. Then it's kind of look like this. Yeah. So in the technical know-how for profile B, he has some mastery for OOP, functional programming, and it progressed into the higher one, and it's accumulated in the term of progression. Yeah. One of our important decisions that we are in a mindful state, we are trying to combine engineering manager and individual contributor track into one. This is this decision coming into sense because of the context that we have almost 50% junior level. In that time, if we are allowing the individual contributor to have another track, we don't have any ability for the senior to have responsibility to develop the junior one. Yeah. So I think that was one our prominent decision. Even in our when we are doing naming convention, we are very distinct, deliberately try to avoid lead and manager into our title, and based on the voting that we have with our principal and our CEO and CTO, basically we are this is not a go-to approach. So I think we are coming into the last one. Yeah.
So this basically just shows how experimentation mindset is actually being followed in the organization. Even to decide on the title, we basically did voting. So it's not something that is mandated by anyone, but we did a research mostly on levels FYI, looking at the titles that are there in Google, in Meta, Grab, Gojek in the regional area. And there are different titles in different organizations, so that's where we come up with these options, right? We have the lead engineer and distinguished engineer in the option 1, but then there is a concern from essentially the recruitment team. How do we actually say that this is the level that we need without causing confusion? If there are too many distinct titles, then it would be very, very hard for us to even ask the recruitment team that we need a senior level of this particular profile. So in the end, we decided to split it into just a 3 distinct title. One is essentially engineer, which is junior engineer, engineer and senior engineer. And then we start coming up with staff engineer, which is staff and senior staff. And then we have principal and senior principal. So that's how we ended up with the current titling that we have in DK at the moment for the engineering arm. And when we did the same exercise again to calibrate people into different profiles, with the 7 different profiles and also the layering that Farid mentioned earlier, we start being able to map everyone. So there's nobody who is left unmapped. And that's why we think, hey, this might actually be a good model and it is actually workable. And at that point, we kind of leave out the profile G, and we make a conscious decision to leave out the chief from all the profilings. Unlike the old Ben, where Ben 1 is the chief, now we have the profile G, but the chief is taken out, right? So from there, we basically tried to scale that model out, and the people partner is basically spread between different areas.
Yeah. So basically, the approach to use 7 layer with each on 3 distinct layer in each layer, and the approach of using technical and soft skill is being scaled not only in engineering. And I think for now in DK we are able to scale it with the infra, with the data team, with the PMs, with the designer, and the last one, I think security, it's quite a harder one, but I think we have managed to pull it out. Yeah. And the usage itself, it has been scaled not only to do capability assessment. We are using as well for the performance. We are using for calibration. We do the budgeting. So, example, if we wanted to build another squad or feature team for another delivery model, we know, oh, we wanted to hire people in the profile D twice, 1 Singapore, 1 Indonesia, 1 remote, etc. etc. For recruitment, we know how to package this into our recruitment, and then for learning, and then one of the most prominent one, we are using this as a reward management, because when we are trying to map people into the 7 one, we are able to, let's say, create new salary scale that more stable compared to the band 1 until 5, and it's I think people is more content with that. Next. Yeah, for most of the time, I think that would be our journey until 2025 for now. But I think there is some development.
So yeah, after the model was, I guess, expanded to the whole organization, we need to start looking ahead and definitely iterate further and see how this would actually work better across the organization. Now we go to an uncharted territory. Well, anyone who watched One Piece kind of know that this is a journey to go there, right? And we're still in the journey, it's not ended yet. The unintended consequences, right, of introducing that 7 profile and introducing it across the organization without trying to, I guess, micromanage the adoption. There are misguided implementation in different areas where people doesn't really understand the meaning of each of the skill set in the profile, but think that that is what it means. And then there's also the cost of inconsistency, where the inconsistent adoption is actually make it very hard for us to actually move things around. So for example, like the clan earlier, if there is a person that's moving from one clan to another clan, but in the previous clan he is a senior engineer, when that person moves to another clan, apparently the person is deemed as a more junior engineer. So how do we actually manage that? So all clans in all areas are actually having the same bar for the engineering excellence and also for the other areas. For us, so far, the lesson learned is we always aim for progress. So it won't ever be perfect. We keep on progressing, we keep on iterating, we keep on experimenting. And in order to actually get the bar aligned between everyone, we started doing calibration with a bigger audience, with other areas, with other functions as well. So inviting others and optimizing the collective intelligence, making the decision more objective. And then we always have to check the underlying assumptions, like what we did before, flashback multiple times, not only making decision from symptoms on the surface. And obviously, as a closure, this is the prime directive on every retro. Regardless of what we discover, we understand and truly believe that everyone did the best job they could, given what was known at the time, their skills and abilities, the resources available, and the situation at hand. And as an organization, we think it's okay. That's pretty much it. Taking questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really like to know how you do with the performance review, right? So my questions is like this. I believe like to go to the next level, we'll have a different salary band, right? So let's say I believe that the performance review and the appraisal itself will have like a normal curve, right? So maybe this year you only have able to promote 5 people, but in performance review you have like 10 people that actually able to move to the next level, right? Because if you bring all the 10, then you have issues with your cash flows. So how you manage it? Because if you are doing that, then it's actually the ceiling that you say before, it actually happens, right? So thank you.
Okay, so basically we are trying to distinguish between salary and bonus, right? Bonus is more performance, salary is ingrained with your capability. So as soon as people has been mapped into the profile, each profile has its own salary range. Yeah, if they are in the more higher pay, in the more higher scale, so in our performance or maybe the salary review, it gets articulated into higher percentage because they need to be able to catch up with the higher percentile. Yeah. So it's a very transparent situation. Related to bonus is a management discretion. If we have profitable business, we kind of wanted to share to our employee and we give some multiplier, or from people that in the profile A, 1x, 2x, but it comes from the pool itself first. So we try to distinguish salary and bonus because salary is more mark of the competence, not part of the company performance, right? Is that answering your question?
No, I think the performance review also impact on their levels, right? So that means some people might be able to be promoted to the next levels, right? Where it will also impact their salary range, right? And there will be challenge, right? Or I don't know how you fix how you tackle that. That if let's say this year you are only able to promote 5 people, but you have 10 people that actually able to be in that levels, right?
Yeah. So again, the first things first, with all the profile, we have salary ranges for each of the profile, and that's also distributed between different areas. And when it comes to so-called performance management and promotion, we kind of try to do it collaboratively with the other principal engineers and the people partner and also the other leaders. So we decide that as a collective whether individuals can be promoted or not. And like what Farid said, actually there is already a problem now when we start moving people from Ben to the mastery model. There are people who are underpaid and there are already people who are overpaid. So that's actually a problem that we're still trying to solve. So I don't have a clear answer for the question at the moment, but we do try to play catch up with the underpaid ones. And for those that are promoted, most probably the salary would have to be bumped a little bit more than non-promotion.
We understand that basically in traditional performance and salary review usually happen once a year. But specific for people that we identify that currently is very left behind, we try multiple catch up for them to be able to catch up the salary. Yeah. So we call it off cycle because it's not happen on January, right? So it can be in the mid year, it can be late on August, in order for us to be able to catch up. And that's the decision for management. Up until now, basically, I think we are not coming into that problem yet. But but when we still implement the band 1 and 5, those still coming. But when we are doing profiling, all the PE is available and they know our pool and budget and etc. We are very open and transparent. Even our CEO is opening his budget, so everyone is known, and every PE can give some prioritization. This one needs to be first. So it's a collaborative decision. It's a not mandated or maybe top-down decision. That would be our experience up until now.
So do I take it you were saying that you don't have managers, right? So does that mean you've got engineers that report to engineers that then handle their performance reviews?
We don't have titles.
You don't have titles.
We don't have manager titles. But
Okay.
there are people actually working. So instead of doing a dual track, we know that after a certain profile for D, E, and F, there is a specialization or tendency for people to specialize. There are people who are still very, very hands-on and wants to code more, and there are people who actually wants to grow people and be doing the manager's responsibility, but without the title.
Okay, all right.
So no, we don't have that.
So, yeah, but you have people that are trained as managers with the right soft
Correct.
skills,
Correct.
and they're the ones that handle the performance reviews.
Yes. What we are avoiding is the titling
Yeah.
to avoid essentially people who are getting manager titles in the previous organization to come into the organization without prior engineering experience,
Okay.
which happens quite often.
And as a backup mechanism, usually in more ideal state, one claim consists of 2 principal engineers. So there is 2. You can say that this is more like a Roman consularship lah. So not only one principal engineer and everyone is bowed to him. Basically, most likely there are 2 people.
Most like a joint. It's almost like a joint leadership. That's the kind of thing that we're trying to implement or we're trying to experiment with.
Any more questions?
Feedback is also from product, right?
Sorry?
Feedback is also from product. Product will give feedback for engineers.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks for the presentations, very interesting. I have 2 questions here. One is, so there may be some people who refuse to move to this new structure or like disagreement like into this new way. So how do you handle these people? And secondly, this exercise may be disruptive to the operations of the organization. So how do you minimize the disruption? Yeah, thanks.
We asked them to go, actually.
So you just
No, just kidding. Well, basically, it's just a discussion, right?
What are the pain points or why are the idea getting rejected? And then essentially it's just a discussion on convincing and reconvincing, just a normal debate. So in the end, everyone is aligned, although some people will begrudgingly follow, but they'll have to follow anyway because that becomes an organization decision.
okay, so do you lose people along this exercise?
Yes.
Yes, but one of the findings that we got in 2031, most engineers that we interview, they hate if their manager cannot code, right? So basically, when we are trying to revamp and goes into this decision basically, I think they are having can sense the merit, right? Because if previously the TL or the manager is just barging them around, giving some scope or timeline, now what we are asking for the PE is to be able to show their technical mastery. So that kind of gives some level of respect for our engineers. So it's similar to the product itself and to other function in our organization. So we are moving into more technical expertise compared to just managing people.
Thank you.
Okay, we go for the last question.
So thanks. I have one question. In such a elaborate organization, right? How do you manage learning and upskilling? Do you have thoughts? Or
Actually, so we do have courses that is offered to the engineers, but that's the problem that I mentioned earlier, where silos start appearing. So different areas are basically trying to upskill the people in their areas differently. So, for example, in my area, what we actually did is create some sort of a learning curriculum for the more junior ones, like the ones on profile A and B and C, and ask them to actually follow them, and ask more senior engineers to actually accompany them on how to practice it on their daily work, essentially. And then in different areas, there is a elaborate classroom type of event that is being held by the more senior engineers to actually make sure that all the junior engineers are growing as well. So it's really different for different areas.
Okay, so I think for base, fundamental, we have some process, and then we try to identify the more junior people, they need more instruction and more knowledge-based information. Hence, in this year, we are establishing what we are called as GK Engineering Academy. So we are trying to inventorize all of our technical stack and make some module and have some classes and hands-on for the whole 2 weeks. But the more senior one, what we are trying to instill in them is more in the technical practice, like pair programming, like mock programming, etc., etc. And our way to, let's say, to have more than one PE in clan is to instill that you always have pair. Yeah. It's similar. It gets articulated when we coming into the squad. When we go into squad, we try as much as possible. When we restructure the squad, at least they have 2 profile D. So these 2 profile D can have more engagement, have more one. So if one squad is 6, basically their span of influence is 3, right? So we try to create some organization setup where this profile D and E have hands to grab people up. So I think that what we are trying to do. Yeah.
Nothing to add?